Today's the day. Spider-Man fans have been impatiently waiting for this. After months of teasing, tribulations, and the pall of it all, Ultimate Spider-Man issue 1 has finally hit the comic book stands physically and digitally. But the question on everybody's mind is, what does this mean for our favorite webhead? Is this just another Spider-Man comic book series? Is this series a one-trick pony? Or is it Marvel just trying to appease its fans with another spin-off series where Peter Parker and Mary Jane have a kid? Probably. I mean, there's no denying that Marvel likes to have its cake and eat it too when it comes to Peter Parker and Mary Jane, given by the sheer number of things that include them together that isn't in the main comic book continuity. But that doesn't mean that this comic book can't be good, and it certainly doesn't mean that we should dismiss it outright. Let's instead take a look at it, see what it's about, and if it's worthy of our time. I'm going to break this up into two separate segments. I'm going to do no spoilers, and I'm going to spoil in earnest. I'll be talking about the comic book itself and the main plot points in the spoiler section. I will try to stay out of review mode as much as possible. I don't want this to be so much of a review as a discussion about the comic and the story itself. I'm also not going to get into the history of the Ultimate Universe or what led up to this series behind the scenes. Instead, I'd rather save those for a future episode, especially as I'd like to eventually cover the OG Ultimate Spider-Man in some capacity. So you'll have to subscribe to get my insights and breakdowns of what came before. However, if you want to know whether it's worth a read or not, the answer is yes. However, if you're listening to a guy like me talk about a 44-page comic book, then you are probably going to pick it up anyways. The story and the art style are good, and it's a return to the Peter Parker stories many of us have been clamoring for. So, if you've been looking for a story involving an older Peter Parker who is married with kids, then this is the story for you. But what does it offer besides a Peter Parker that's married and has children? Issue 1 is light on the action in favor of giving us an intriguing setup. This brave new world Hickman and Chichetto are building has an intriguing hook beyond the Peter and Mary Jane of it all. I was already all in on the idea of an older Peter getting his powers, but now I really want to know about two other important people in Peter's life. Two people that I am henceforth dubbing the boys. Who are the boys? Well, in order to find that out, you'll have to keep listening. Anyways, so far the Ultimate Universe is doing just what the original did, shaking up the source material and exploring new ways to handle classic characters. I have a particular love for the Ultimate Universe because Ultimate Spider-Man is what got me into comics to begin with. It's kind of kismet for me that the Ultimate Universe is delivering the kind of Spider-Man stories I want to read again. I'm also 31, and quite frankly, I'm ready to see an older Peter Parker. I'm tired of seeing him in high school. That's not to knock those stories, but they're not the stories that I particularly will find interesting nowadays. And I can fill pages on the whole Peter and Mary Jane thing, and probably will at one point, because I have a lot to talk about in terms of that subject. All in all, so far I'm impressed. We knew that Peter and Mary Jane would be married with kids in this story. However, it was the hook we didn't know, or at least I didn't know about, that intrigued me the most. Really excited to see what happens next, and I hate that we have to wait for more. It's a solid recommendation for me, and not just because I'm a Spider-Man fan, or even a Mary Jane and Peter fan for that matter. Okay, are you guys ready to move into spoilers? Because I'm ready to move into spoilers. So this is your spoiler warning. After this point, I will start talking about events within the comic itself. Pausing just to make sure that everybody is gone. I hear the door slamming. Alright, are you guys ready to move on? Yep. Alright, so am I. So what was the hook I was talking about? Who are the boys? Ultimate Spider-Man issue 1 brings with it the revelation that Uncle Ben is still alive. Not only is he still alive, but he works at the Daily Bugle. At the beginning, we get an absolutely fantastic fake out where J. Jonah Jameson yells for Ben Parker instead of Peter Parker. It's actually really cute because he runs past Peter and he's like, "Hey Jonah," and Jonah's like, "Hey Peter," and then starts yelling for Parker again. Apparently in this universe, Uncle Ben works for the newspaper and has been working with J. Jonah Jameson for quite a bit of time if their relationship is anything to go by. It's also interesting to note that Robbie Robertson is still at the Daily Bugle as well. But by the looks of it, he's a little bit more passive and a little bit more willing to fall to, shall we say, outside influences. He and Jonah definitely aren't as close as they usually are, and I'm curious if that'll come back in the story at any point. J. Jonah finally finds Uncle Ben, and this leads into their chemistry. They are part of the old guard working at the Daily Bugle in this universe. And I just never expected Uncle Ben to be a journalist. I mean, I knew he was going to be alive in some capacity, but I wasn't expecting him to work at the Daily Bugle. Nor did I expect him to be J. Jonah Jameson's best friend. It's kind of a hell of a setup as a two-faced presser from the public, the newspaper, and the board, and only have each other to rely on. Their back and forth is really good writing too. Like, it's funny, it's witty, and it really shows how much these two people care for each other and how long they've been working together. Now, the two go back and forth for a little bit before Peter finally comes in and interrupts them. Apparently, he and Uncle Ben have something important to go to. But we'll get back to that in a second, because we're not done with the boys. See, the two of them are kind of dual uncling, dual parenting our protagonists in one Peter Parker. Peter needs a tie for this event, and in true JJ fashion, Uncle Jay gives up his tie and then helps Peter tie it while also giving him life advice. See what I'm talking about? Uncle Jay being adorable? The boys. The boys. Anyways, after schooling Peter in life advice, J. Jonah goes off to deal with this nonsense at the board. And can I just say it's really great seeing J. Jonah back in true form? I mean, I really like what they've done recently with him in the comics, but did you know he's also one of the first Spider-Man villains? If you'd like to hear me talk about those original Spider-Man comics, make sure you leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Now again, we're going to circle back to the thing that Peter and Uncle Ben go to, because I have more to say about that, but right now I'd rather talk about what's going on at the Daily Bugle. It might surprise you, not really, that the Daily Bugle is in some hot water. It would seem that people aren't really appreciative of their coverage of a certain event that happened in the prequel series. And I'm not going to get into it too much, but basically something blew up and everybody blames Tony Stark for it. And a bunch of people died, but I digress. And don't at me in the comics. I do know some of what happened, I just haven't reread that comic in a bit. Anyways, the Daily Bugle is now facing pressure from, I guess, the public and also the board about its direction. Of course, the main person leading the charge is one Wilson Fisk. Our big OG lovable Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. Stealing Ultimate Spider-Man's jokes aside, I actually do really love Wilson Fisk. I just did a video on how good he is in Echo, and feel free to check that out. But he's also one of my favorite Spider-Man villains. I love, and also in the Ultimate Universe, he's kind of like the big villain, and it's just so good. I'm really glad to see him kind of show up as the first big villain in this series as well. And I'm curious to see how this Wilson Fisk will be different than other Wilson Fisks. The word Kingpin is not hinted at or even referenced in this issue, so I'm curious to see how that will play out. Free Willy is just as menacing as always, though. He has this goon with an eye patch behind him that just mostly glowers a lot. I like to think that they're dating. Big Willie is on the hunt, though. Public and the board are demanding immediate changes, and he's here to clean house. He outright mentions that he wants someone to toe the line. Get a nice contrast between Uncle Ben and J. Jonah Jameson. J. Jonah Jameson obviously screams, "I quit," and barges out of the office, whereas Uncle Ben keeps a much clearer head, asks some questions, gets a lay of the land, finds out that Robbie is going to be their fall guy, and then walks out. His above middle-aged man meet in the bar with no name later, and then decide to start their own newspaper together. Uncle Ben hilariously insists that they're going to report the truth, which makes even J. Jonah Jameson laugh. There is a nice compromise, though, where they promise not to lie, and then toast to that. Really, it's Uncle Ben and J. Jonah Jameson that take center stage in this first issue. As we establish this exodus from the Daily Bugle, Peter, Mary Jane, and the kids take a back seat. Peter does eventually meet them at the bar, but we'll get to that later. Because they aren't the only characters we establish in the first issue. Now, cover reveal already told us the Green Goblin would be showing up in some capacity. Well, we get our first look at the Green Goblin in this issue. He seemingly blows up a car Fisk and his one-eyed goon, aka his boyfriend, get out of. We also learn at the memorial that Norman and Emily Osborn are dead, which is also where we get our first look at Harry Osborn. A quick note, the man leading the memorial is Matt Murdock. Priest Matt Murdock, to be exact. Matt is also a priest in the main comic book series right now. Let me know if that comic is any good. I keep meaning to go back to it. I've read the first 2 issues, but I just haven't had a chance. Harry gives a speech about his father and how he misses him. Later dialogue reveals that Peter and Harry have only met once and aren't friends in this universe. There are hints that the Norman of this universe might have had some shady dealings, but we don't learn anything more than that, except that Uncle Ben once interviewed him. One interesting thing we do learn, though, is that Peter came to live with his Uncle Ben and Aunt May when he was 15. Now, this is a small thing, but a significant departure from the usual canon. Now, in most canons, Peter barely has any memories of his birth parents and went to live with his aunt and uncle at an early age. This Peter has very clear memories of his parents and really misses them, a feeling he and his Uncle Ben share, as Uncle Ben has only recently lost his wife May. This is highlighted best when Peter finally gets the courage to ask his Uncle Ben if he's fine. To which Uncle Ben asks if Peter is fine after all these years, his own parents' death, to which Peter replies, "No, I am not." But so far we haven't talked about the spider of it all. We know Peter doesn't have his powers going into this, but how does he get them? We know from the events leading up to Ultimate Spider-Man that the Maker intervened in the events that would have seen Peter get his powers. We also know that a young Tony Stark and several other heroes found out about this and stole back the catalyst for several heroes to get their powers back. For the purposes of this video, all you need to know is that one of these catalysts is the spider that would have turned Peter into Spider-Man, and that it has been stolen by Tony Stark. Now, the night before the memorial, a box appears in the Parker household. Inside of the box is a suit, the spider itself, and a message from Tony Stark in the future. He's currently hiding out 6 months in the future and is hoping that Peter will help him. He tells Peter about his destiny as Spider-Man and that was taken from him. He offers Peter a suit and the opportunity to regain what was stolen from him. According to Tony, he was supposed to be this amazing superhero who was denied his chance by a great evil. "We're going to free the world," Tony promises Peter. In classic Stark fashion, he gives Peter a big promise and tells Peter that he was supposed to be this great and amazing hero. Peter was supposed to save the world. Peter was supposed to inspire people. Peter was supposed to do all of this amazing stuff, and someone took it from him. His destiny had been denied from him, which was something he had been feeling all along. At several points in the comics, Peter mentions feeling like something is wrong with him. While he loves his wife and children very much, he also isn't satisfied with his life. Before Tony's reveal, he didn't know what that is, but now he knows he's right. He knows he's missing out on something. With the spider firmly in his possession, he now has to make a choice. Does he embrace his destiny? Does he take back what was stolen from him? In a way, his feelings parallel J. Jonah Jameson's and Uncle Ben's. They aren't unhappy with how their lives turned out, but they do know that they aren't fulfilling their destinies. For Du Bois, this means leaving the Daily Bugle, leaving the shackles that have been binding them, and making something good and honorable all on their own. And for our protagonist, our Mr. Parker, this means taking the spider, letting it bite him, and accepting his destiny as a superhero. But my question is, what kind of hero will Peter become? I'm curious how Peter will become the unflinching hero we know and love. Is his life experience so far enough to teach him with great power comes great responsibility? Will he have to lose someone this time around? Uncle Ben tells him to wake up, but what superhero is he waking up to? Mary Jane later says Peter is unsatisfied with who he is. This matches up with what Tony says later in the issue, and what Peter himself said even earlier in the issue. This all comes to a head when Peter sees the spider. Tony tells Peter that his hope will be that he and his allies will see Peter when they come out on the other side. Tony wants to step out into a world of heroes, but will he? The Spider-Man he wants doesn't exist. I have a feeling this Peter's responsibility will be to his family first. Peter has taken the first step by stating he wants his destiny and letting the spider bite him. As dawn breaks over the city, we see a newly transformed Peter Parker staring down at his concrete jungle, with 6 months to become a Spider-Man. Whatever Spider-Man he becomes, well, we'll have to keep reading to find out. This has been the Multiversal Archivist. Like, comment, and subscribe to get more insights, news updates, and various video essays on our amazing multiverse. I'll see you in the next video, but for now, keep calm and never take your T-Rex stepmother out to a vegan restaurant.